Everyone thought that warriors will be bottom of the barrel in Path of Exile 2's second major update, but actually so far they're surprising plenty of players. So in this video we've teamed up with 3 of our creators to check out their builds for the warrior for you to sink your teeth into. We'll be focused on the leveling builds in this video, but in each guide there's variants for varying points of progression both in level and in cost of gear. So check out their full guides with the links below. Up first we have WOOLIE's Firebringer warrior build, which revolves around the new Fissure mechanic, as when a given Fissure is hit by a slam, this will proc an aftershock along its entire length, hitting basically anything standing anywhere near it. Whilst Fissure aftershocks are limited to once every 0.2 seconds, this limit actually applies individually to each Fissure, so that means our goal is to simply create as many of those Fissures as we can, which ends up leading to something like this. Just make sure you're treating your PC nicely, as these effects do have a tendency to absolutely melt your FPS. To generate those fissures, we obviously will be using the Volcanic Fissure and the newly added Forge Hammer, and remember to use these with Infernal Cry. But the playstyle is almost entirely possible thanks to the almighty Stampede. Each Stampede footstep counts as a slam, which means every step you take procs all the fissures, plus when utilizing the new Creator support gem, the jump at the end of Stampede also creates fissures, so yeah, you can definitely see the appeal. Essentially, Stampede both generates and triggers fissures by itself, which makes general clearing a breeze, but as it also procs all other fissures, it's good for single target damage too. Aside from all that juicy Stampede and Fissure jibber jabber, we'll also be using the new Ancestral Cry to make all slams ancestrally boosted for its duration, and we'll pop down a War Banner for those big beefy bosses. For single target, we want to use Infernal Cry if we have Ancestral Cry, and then use Forge Hammer followed by Volcanic Fissure, then Ancestral Cry, then basically mash Stampede until your hands fall off. Then, as we mentioned before, throw in that War Banner on top against super tanky enemies. For the defensive side of the build, we use Warbringer's Renly's training node to cap our block chance with minimal investment, with the option to use either a rare shield or Svalin depending on our budget. We also utilize the new Armor applies to elemental damage mods on every piece of gear we can find it on, reaching over 200% with the passive nodes too. So when paired with Jade Heritage's 10% Fizz damage reduction and various life recovery mechanics from our Spirit Reservation supports and dual mods, our overall defense is pretty high, to the point where reading map mods is merely a suggestion. Up next then we have SKADOOSH and his Corrupted Cry Warbringer, which is a strength stacking Warcry build, and as the name suggests, it revolves around the support gem Corrupting Cry. This support gem makes it so that the linked Warcry applies a bleed-like effect called Corrupted Blood that stacks up to 10 times. Each stack does 25% of your total strength, hence why this build focuses on stacking it up. Each additional stack refreshes all the previous ones, and it's important to note that it isn't actually a bleed, so it won't scale with any bleed related effects. Now if you combine this with a ton of Warcry speed, AoE and no cooldown Warcries from the ascendancy called Warcaller's Bellow, you can genuinely clear the entire screen in just one button, even exploding the corpses of anything else you've killed and instantly killing everything else around those. So this build is perfect if you're the type of player that loves that one button bashing playstyle. Once we do get several sources of Warcry speed, it does start to drain our mana pretty heavily, but to deal with this we can get Urgent Call and Blood Magic on the passive tree, as well as reducing the cost of Warcry with Inspiration support. Unlike in some other warrior builds, in this one we can truly utilise the weapon swap system to its full potential to improve our single target damage. We have Warcry passives on set 1 and Totem passives on set 2. This means we can have a shield to be able to block whilst we're Warcrying, and then quickly swap to a two-hander to place down our totems and use another Warcry to quickly swap back again. So whilst our totems are dealing the damage, we can still benefit from the shield and Warcries to regain absurd amounts of life back. To further our damage on bosses, we can use Earthquake to create overlapping jagged ground, and the Fissure Aftershocks with Forge Hammer 2 ending up in a not so beautiful display of absolute carnage. This build is only accessible once you get Corrupting Cry, which is a tier 3 support gem, and when you get your first ascendancy Warcaller's Bellow. But don't worry, because in this same build guide, SKADOOSH has a link to his full early leveling guide too before you get to this point. Then we have our third Warbringer build of the day, which comes from WAGGLE, and this one is focused around using Shockwave Totem, with a playstyle that feels somewhere in between traditional full Totem builds and your typical melee slam builds. This one is a super viable starter build with no budget, it scales really well with investment, and it packs excellent DPS uptime whilst also being pretty tanky for a life build. Now, as you would expect, Shockwave Totem is going to provide almost all of our damage here, and you can combo this with skills like Volcanic Fissure, Earthquake and Forge Hammer to trigger even more damage with each and every totem pulse. Earthquake is pretty much just used here to provide jagged ground for your totems, and the damage is scaled by the totem damage, not from Earthquake. So for gems here we can prioritize utility like AoE and duration instead. If you want to see Waggle's full skill gem recommendations, you can find those included in the build. For clearing quick packs, you can place a totem and then simply follow it up with a Volcanic Fissure. If you need more damage for bigger packs or bosses, throw out a Forge Hammer instead of a Fissure, or press Earthquake to spawn that jagged ground for the totems to erupt. But if possible, you don't want to use Volcanic Fissure whilst Forge Hammer is active. When it comes to tankier mobs and bosses, you can then drop your War Banner and hit them with Sunder for 2 more big DPS boosts. Berserk is also a nice damage increase but does require some life regen to use, so if you can't actually sustain it yet, you can use Herald of Ash for a minor clear speed boost, or tame Beast and find yourself a beast with a haste aura and support it with Brutus's Brain. This build also naturally has solid durability thanks to stacking armor, and making that armor also apply to elemental damage and block chance. It's also somewhat safer than some traditional melee builds thanks to its longer range gameplay loop and more mobility thanks to the high DPS uptime of those totems. This build is perfect against content when you can drop down your full combo and just hang around and watch it all unfold. Think boss fights, ritual and simulacrum. Gearing up is pretty simple with this one. Get yourself a nice two-handed mace with some big physical DPS, and with the rest of the gear you're mostly looking for life, resists and armor. As well as of course things like attack speed on your gloves, flat fizz on your ring and amulet, and percentage armor applies to elemental damage on your chest, gloves, boot and helm. Ornate Plate base is very strong as the life regen is needed to sustain the degen from Berserk and the degen from your gameplay. So there we have it, that's a quick look at 3 Warbringer League starter builds in 0.3. If you want to catch these builds in action live or just learn more about them, make sure to show these guys some love over on their socials, which you can find links to in the description. And don't forget to boot up these builds in full before you go if you're keen to give them a try. Thank you all for watching guys, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care.